All right, guys. Very good evening and a very happy new year as well to all of you. So today what we are going to do is basically a topic on the Fortigate firewall, which revolves around routing. Okay. Now in this particular topic, we are also live streaming this just to you know uh, share this knowledge with all the other people, with our subscribers as well. And so whenever they have any problems and challenges, they can just look back into this particular video. All right. Okay. So guys, what I'm going to do is, for now, people who are on the WebEx session, I'll mute you for maybe around 20 to 25 minutes. All right. And then I'll open this up for open session question and answers. Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and mute you. Okay. All right. Great. Okay. So, all right. So guys, today's topic, as I said, is basically routing on the Fortigate firewall. Okay. Now we all know, and we all have, most of us are coming from, networking backgrounds. So we know what exactly routing is, but what we are going to today learn is more of how to basically implement the routing when it comes to the Fortigate firewall, and what are the features that you have on the Fortigate firewall with respect to the routing part. Okay. Okay, so let's move on, and these are the topics that will be covered in the routing session. Okay. Okay. All right. So let's start this, and let's try to understand that when we are talking about routing, we are basically talking about something which is called as an IP layer routing. Okay. All right. So when I say IP layer routing, what exactly that does it mean? What is routing even at the first place? See, routing is basically how a Fortigate, okay, decides where to send the packets that it receives and the packet that it generates. Okay. Now I'll repeat this again. Routing is basically when the Fortigate firewall decides where to send the packets that it receives on the interface and the packet that it generates. All right. Now, when I say when the packet that it generates, what I mean is a self-generated traffic. Okay. Let's say, for example, Fortigate wants to take updates. Okay. Maybe an updates on the antivirus or maybe IPS or application control. So this updates needs to be generated by the Fortigate firewall itself, right? So that is why it is called a self-generated traffic. So even for this, Fortigate needs to look into the routing table, find out that what exactly the route is, and then according to that, it has to forward the traffic. All right. Now, all the network devices, okay, that perform this routing, okay, they have a routing table, right? Now, a routing table basically contains of a series of rules. That's the whole routing table, right? Routing table is just series of rules or list of rules which basically determines what needs to be done when the traffic arrives on that device. It could be a router, it could be a firewall, it could be a layer 3 switch, right? So a routing table basically contains a series of rules. All right. Now each rule specifies the next hop, which may or may not be the final destination of the packet. Okay. Now each routing hop in the routing path requires a routing table lookup to pass the packet along until it reaches the final destination. Now, when I say routing lookup, what it means is that the Fortigate firewall basically looks into the routing table, finds out that if a certain destination needs to be reached, what is the next hop, or what is the next interface, or what is the next IP as a gateway that I need to forward this traffic to. All right. And once I have that information, I'll go ahead and forward that traffic. Okay. Now, when routing the packets, right, Fortigate will first finds a matching route in a list of routes based on the packet's destination address. And then that is not just for the Fortigate firewall, that is basically for all the network devices which is out there. Whenever you are doing a routing, okay, we have learned this in the CCNA that whenever a router routes a packet, okay, it looks for the destination, right? And after looking to the destination, then it makes a call that whether it needs to forward the traffic to whatever interface that you have, right? Okay. Now, we have already discussed about the NAT mode in the FortiGate firewall, which is nothing but when your FortiGate firewall is acting as a layer 3 device. Okay, we have two modes, right? One is called as the NAT mode, one is called as the transparent mode, right? So when I say the NAT mode or the transparent mode, so transparent mode is nothing but when you are your FortiGate firewall is acting as a layer 2 switch, right? So whenever your device or whenever your FortiGate firewall is acting as a layer 2 switch, you call that as transparent mode. Okay, and when your FortiGate firewall is acting as a layer 3 device, okay, then this is called as a NAT mode. Now when I say NAT mode, it does not mean that it will be basically doing NAT. Yes, it will be, but the NAT mode in a way signifies that it is acting as a layer 3 device in the network that you have. Okay, all right. Now, let's look into the first thing, which is basically the route lookup, right? So we all know that whenever we are routing any packet, right? So for any session, the FortiGate performs a route table lookup. Okay. Now it says twice. Now always remember this, that people who wants to sit for the NEC4 examination, you have to ensure that you know this, or at least have this in your mind, because routing table lookup happens twice. What are the two situations? One situation is for the first packet sent by the originator. Now originator would always be your I mean, not always, but then whatever your source IP is coming with, and it is most probably a TCP SYN packet. If it is a TCP packet, then it will be a SYN packet. Okay, I'm not saying if it is a ping packet, then there's no SYN packet required. But my point is that for the first packet sent by the originator, so originator can, in most of the cases, will be your client, right? Second is for the first reply packet coming from the responder, right? See, so it's like a very simple scenario. Let's say, for example, I have a PC over here, okay, and I have a firewall over here. Simple situation. Let's keep it simple. So let's say this is a server. Okay, this is a user, right? Now what is happening is that whenever I want to access this server, right, if I want to access this on the web browser, I'll send off a TCP SYN packet, right? So the SYN packet, okay, will be initiated from the originator or the client machine, right? And it will go through the firewall to the actual server that we have, right? So the FortiGate firewall, before sending this SYN packet, right, to the server that we have, it is going to do something which is called as a route lookup, right? Now this route lookup will first of all look into the traffic and see, is it the first packet? Is it being sent by the originator? Yes, it is the first packet and it is being sent by the originator. Okay, all right. I'll look into the routing table and see what is the next hop. So I found out that, okay, my next hop is basically from, let's say, port 2. Okay, and this guy is port 3, let's say. Okay. Now, what will happen is that once the route lookup is done, I know that, okay, I need to send this traffic from the port 2. Okay, all right. So send the traffic out. The traffic will be sent out. That's how the route lookup happens. Now, what will happen the next step? Very simple. We know that in the TCP three-way handshake, when we are sending a SYN packet, the expectation is that I will be getting a SYN reply, right? So in the SYN reply, we have SYN packet plus the acknowledgement. Okay, now we all know that this SYN packet is from the server. Okay, this was from the client, this is from the server. Okay, and what is this ACK? This ACK is basically an acknowledgement that I got the SYN packet. Okay, now what happens over here is that, again, there will be a route lookup on the FortiGate firewall, and in this time it is going to check the reply packet, the first reply packet, right? So once this traffic is being received on the FortiGate firewall on port 2, I'm going to again look for a route lookup, and I'll see that, okay, this basically is a packet which was originated inside, but I do have a route for that. So I'll go ahead and, forward this traffic as well, according to the session table information that I have, and whatever policy is basically allowing this kind of traffic. Okay, so that is how the route lookup happens on the FortiGate firewall. Second, routing information is written on the session table. Yes, Great, because whenever the traffic basically reaches your FortiGate firewall, it looks into the routing table. Then once the routing table information is there, it'll find out whether do I have a matching policy for it or not. If I receive of matching firewall policy, I'll put this traffic in my session table. Okay, so I'll say this is the source IP, this is the source port, this is the destination IP, this is the destination port, this is the time. Okay, this is the session ID that I have. All right, and a lot of more information as well. But then this basically constitutes your session table. Okay, that is how every firewall, every stateful firewall basically works, right? Okay, all the other packets for that session will use the same path. Absolutely correct. So once I have the information about the route, okay, the first packet and the second reply packet, I would basically use the same route for the whole communication. So let's say if I'm trying to download a 10 GB file, okay, if I want to download this 10 GB file, whatever route I have taken, so FortiGate has identified that route port 3 is going to be used to access the user machine, and port 2 will be used to access the server machine. So now I have this information. Now, once I have that information for the whole 10 GB file download, I'll use this port 3 and port 2 for the whole communication. Okay. Now let's have a look into the exception. After a routing table change happens, okay, the route information is flushed from the session and must be relearned. Okay. Now this happens that, for example, let's say you have two ISP connections, and because of certain reasons, your ISP1 had some issues. Okay, so there will be a routing change, right? Because now the traffic will be gone through your ISP2. Okay, if in case you have an SD-WAN setup, or let's not complicate this. Let's say, for example, you have ISP1 and ISP2, you are doing a redundancy protocol on that. And if in case the ISP1 goes down for some reasons, you will be using ISP2 to send the traffic out. Okay, now when I'm using ISP2, obviously I'm using a different port over here. So let's say this is port 4. Okay, now if I'm using port 4, that obviously this means that I'm using a different port. The route will be changed, the information is changed. Even on the session table, the information is changed. So what I'm going to do, I'll always make sure that if such thing happens, I'm going to flush off the routing information. Okay, and I'm going to learn again whatever the the ports I'm going to use for the new routing that I have. All right, so now I know that this time, okay, the port 3 still remains the same for accessing the user, but in case of the server, now rather than using port 2, I have to basically use port 4. Okay, so whenever a routing table change happens, route information is flushed from the session and must be relearned. That's what it means. Okay. All right. Okay, so this is the way how you configure a static route. So you can basically configure a dynamic route, BGP, OSPF, RIP, into the Fortigate firewall as well. You can definitely go ahead and integrate that as well. But before stepping into that, we'll first of all understand how a static route basically works on the Fortigate firewall, right? So when we are talking about the static routes, this does not have to be, I mean, it's quite understood that it has to be configured manually, right? Now, by the administrator or whoever the firewall administrator is, simple matching of packets to a route based on the packet's destination IP, right? So whenever we are creating any kind of static routes in place, it always means that I'm using the destination IP. Okay. All right. Okay, so there's a question in the chat. Ramchandra, the session basically is every weekend 6 to 8. That's the timings. Okay. All right. Now coming back. So over here, look closely. Let me just zoom this a little bit so that becomes easier for you. Hold on. Okay. Now let's see. See over here, what I'm trying to say is that whenever you are creating a route, okay, so it is first of all ask you the destination. Now this destination does not needs to be 00 all the time. 00 is what? 00 is your default route, right? If in case no route is matched, the default route will kick in, right? That's what the 00 stands for. Now you see this named address. So named address is nothing but a couple of address objects that you have created on the FortiGate firewall. You can use that as well. Okay, that's named address. Next is called the internet service. See, what happens is when you buy a FortiGate firewall, right? So there are certain pre-configured address objects that comes with that. Okay, now what happens is the internet service over here basically is a list of all the known websites, web servers out there. For example, Amazon, okay, or Google for that matter, okay, Yahoo. So these are address object which is already configured. So what you do not have to configure them again. You can just use them, okay, rather than using the subnet. You can use the internet service and select the Amazon or the Google or the Yahoo, all right, and then make the destination as that, and whatever the gateway that you want, whatever your next hop is. Now the gateway address over here, this gateway address is always your next hop. What do you mean by next hop? So next hop is your upstream. Okay, now see over here we are basically talking about a resource which is available on the internet, right? So whenever I'm talking about a resource which is available on the internet, we have to make sure that it is in an upstream device, right? Now there are different meanings of upstream and downstream. We'll talk about that later, but then in a nutshell or in short, upstream is always your next hop. Upstream is always your next device where you would be forwarding the traffic, and that device will take care of the traffic that where it needs to forward that traffic again, right? Now administrative distance, yes, that's one thing which we all have or must have basically learned in the dynamic routing protocols. See, every routing protocol has an AD value, right? Even static routes have an AD value, right? So what happens is by default, an AD value which is given to a static route on the FortiGate firewall is 10. That's default, right? You can always change this value if you want to. Okay, and then you have the priority as well. So priority is basically used for example, I'm going to teach that maybe in the next maybe 10 minutes or so. So let's say for example, let's say for example you have the default destination which is 00, and to reach that particular gateway you have 10.200.1254, and let's say you have 10.300. Oh, sorry, I cannot do that. So 10.130.10. 15, let's say for example, this is the next gateway as well. So now I have two gateways for the same destination. All right, now who should take the priority first? Now that's the place where your priority kicks in, and then you can use this value, you can use this feature to ensure that if you want this guy to always takes the precedence, use the priority over here and make it 10, and the next one, let's make this as 20. So whoever has the lower priority will basically takes the precedence. Okay, all right. Okay, now Ramchandra, what you can do is you can get in touch with the management, all right, and they'll basically guide you to how to attend the classes of FortiGate firewall. Okay, coming back, hold on. Okay, now the next part is the comment section. So comment section is basically, see, what happens is that whenever you are creating any routes, right, you are always creating routes for one of your clients. Yes. So whenever your clients comes into you and basically asks that, okay, I want to access this information or that resource or whatever it is, you can use this comment section to more better explain the reason why you have created that particular route. Okay, maybe a ticket ID, maybe a specific request made by some VIP person that they need some specific routes and specific priorities and whatever the case may be. You can use that over in the comment section. That's why you normally use, and this comment section always helps to understand that if in case you have 50 routes, all right, in your FortiGate firewall, then you know that, okay, if these 50 routes are there, what route is made for what particular reason. Otherwise you can still figure it out, but then it will take a lot of time, right? Because you have to look into the destination, the interfaces and the policies and all that stuff, then you will be able to know that, okay, oh, this route is basically for this firewall policy, or maybe for the VPN traffic, or whatever the case may be. But then if I have it mentioned that this is for the VPN, that would be easy, right? Okay, so you can use that comment section as well. Next, status. Let's say, for example, you do not want to, so let's say, for example, you are, let's say, so I have 192.168.1.0/24. Okay. Now this is the destination. This is the gateway. Now, I'm actually doing a migration. Okay, the migration is planned for next week. I'm just configuring all the, firewall policies, routes, and VPNs and all that stuff on the FortiGate firewall before that migration time that I have. Okay, so I can configure this and disable the route. So what will happen is that I have all the configuration is placed, but then they are not active on the FortiGate firewall. They're disabled. And once I have the migration downtime with me, I'll go ahead, enable it, and that's it. Yeah, that's how you use the status in the routes. Okay, all right. You can use this for even testing purposes. Maybe you're troubleshooting something, maybe a certain issues is coming up. Even then you can use that. I'm just giving you one of the reasons of where you can use these different options that we have. All right, priority, as I told you earlier, if in case you have two gateways for the same destination, then which one should take priority, that's up to you. Okay, all right. Yeah, so that's what I was talking about, the named addresses, right? So named address, as I said earlier, that you can use them to basically create a destination or create routes for some destinations which is already created in your FortiGate firewall beforehand. So let's say, for example, I have created remote subnet. Now, this remote subnet is basically an IP address range or a subnet, which is for 172.16.32.0. Let's say, for example, okay, I have it configured. Now I want to create a route for that. So what I can do, I can come to the routes section, and instead of again putting the destination as 172.16, I can just go into the named address, select the address object, and that's it. Put in the gateway, that's it. Done. Okay. Okay, dynamic routes. Yes, so that's basically the place where you go ahead and make use of the dynamic routing protocol as well. Okay, now paths are automatically discovered. Again, this is CCNA basics, but then paths are automatically discovered. That's the job of a dynamic routing protocol. Yes, FortiGate communicates with the neighboring routers to find the best route. Yes, if in case if it's an OSPF or BGP, whatever it is. Path are also based on the packet's destination IP. Yes, that's true. Routing becomes somewhat self-organizing. Absolutely. FortiGate supports RIP, OSPF, and BGP, and ISIS. Now, to be very honest, in my experience, I haven't seen ISIS being used on the FortiGate firewall, and even on the routers, to be very honest. But BGP is used a lot on the FortiGate. It's one of the best features of FortiGate because the way it integrates with the BGP routing protocol is quite amazing. And OSPF is also used a lot. RIP, again, not being used. Now, if you have to, basically, let's say, for example, if in case you want to use this dynamic routing protocols on your FortiGate firewall, you have to first of all enable that particular feature. By default, this is not enabled. Okay, but if in case you have to enable this, you can come into the system tab. Under the system, you have an option of feature visibility. Under the feature visibility, you have this option of advanced routing. Once you enable this, click on save changes, then you can basically configure your OSPF, BGP, RIP, and ISIS as well. Okay, so that's the place you have to come before you make use of these dynamic routing protocols. Okay, all right. Policy-based routes. Now, see, policy-based routes are routes which is a little different when you can compare that to a static route. But to give you a one-line answer of what exactly the difference between these two are, is static routes is purely layer 3. Okay, but over here the policy-based routes are layer 4. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that you can create whatever routes you can, but then you have this option. This is the most this is the most used feature when you're using the policy based. I mean, that is one of the reasons why you're using the policy based route even at the first place, right? Because you want to control the route on the basis of what port information is coming up with that. Okay, so that is why you use this as well. Okay, so as it says, more granular matching than static routes, absolutely, because you're using the protocol. Yes, obviously, maybe whatever protocol that you're using, OSPF, VGP, ICMP, or IP. Okay, you have the information about the source address. Even static route has it. You have the information about the source port. Now that you do not have on the static routes. Okay, you can just put in the destination IP address, destination subnet. That is it. Can't use ports. Yes, destination ports, type of service. Now this is what identifies or differs over here. Okay, now. Okay. Manually configured. Yes, this is not dynamic in nature. So if in case you want to create a policy based route, you have to ensure that this is on whatever requirement that you have. So whatever requirement is that you need, on the basis of that, you have to create the policy base, not dynamic in nature. Okay. Next, have precedence over the routing table. Absolutely. So whenever the Fortigate is looking for a routing table lookup, the policy based routes, this is the one thing which it checks first. Once, if in case you do not have any policy based routes in place, then it is going to look into your static routes. Okay, but if in case you have certain policy based routes which is matching the traffic, it will take precedence. It is not going to check into the routing table. It is not going to check the static routes. Okay, it is going to look to the policy routes first. Okay, now let me show you what I mean when I say the policy routes. Hold on. Okay, let me zoom this up a little bit. Yeah. See, whenever a packet matches a policy route, okay, the Fortigate takes one of the two actions. Okay, either it routes the packet to the configured interface and the gateway by bypassing the routing table, or it stop checking the policy route. Okay, so the packet is routed based on the routing table. Okay, now remember, for a policy route to forward the traffic out of a specific interface, there should be an active route for the destination using that interface in the routing table. Otherwise, the policy route does not work. Now, what I mean over here is that if in case you want this policy route to, become active, you have to first of all ensure that at least nothing, then at least you should have a default gateway or default route on your FortiGate firewall. If you have that, you can use the policy route. Okay. Now in the policy route, you can make use of the protocol section that if it matches a destination and it also matches, let's say for example, you want to access Google server, and with that, you are also saying that if it is 443 connection, okay, then you are allowed to access, or then you are allowed to forward the traffic. Otherwise, if somebody is trying to telnet or SSH to that, then you are not allowed. Okay, so you have that granularity over here in the routing section, in the policy route section. Okay, and if your action is forward traffic, then it will basically bypass the routing table and it will use the policy route to forward the traffic. That is it. But then if you are having this option of stop policy routing basically means that it is not going to further check any information about that particular route under the policy route. It is basically going to skip to your static routes. Okay, because what happens is a lot of times there are certain traffic which matches the policy route, and there are a lot of traffic which is matching the static route as well. So what you do is you make your policy routes very specific on the very specific ports. And if in case you have a lot of policy routes in place, then what you do is you create certain policy routes and you say stop policy routing. So what happens is that all that particular traffic will skip to your static routes. All the rest will be using your policy routes. Um it's like having a firewall policy. Okay, you have certain firewall policies which would match the traffic. Anything else will switch over to your static routes. That's what basically it means. Okay. Now over here we have one more thing which is called as internet services routing. Now, have you seen that option when we were talking about the static routes? You have this option, internet service. So this internet service is what we were talking, that this is basically pre-configured, address objects which is on your FortiGate firewall. You can use them if in case you want. Let's say Amazon, Google, Yahoo. These are all pre-configured. You can use them rather than creating the address object for them again. Okay. Right. Now the IPv6 part. Now again, this also is by default not visible on the GUI section. Okay. If you want to make use of the IPv6, then first you need to do is you need to go into the system feature visibility. And under the feature visibility, you can go ahead and enable that option as well. Once you have enable that option, then whenever you are creating a route, so you have to, if you have to create a, you go into the network section, and over here, if you do not have this IPv6 enabled, you click on create new, and then it will go ahead and give you the option to create a static route. If you have this IPv6 enabled, once you click on the create new, it is going to show you another option of that what route do you want to create. Do you want to create an IPv4 or do you want to create an IPv6? Then according to what are the options that you choose, you will be presented with those kind of options in the FortiGate firewall static routes. Okay. All right. Now let's quickly do a small knowledge check. Okay. So I'm going to unmute you guys. Now, if in case you have any questions, doubts with respect to just this part of the route, you are very welcome to answer, question as well. So guys on the YouTube, you can use the chat window, and guys on the WebEx, you can either unmute yourself or you can put it in your chat window as well. All right. Question number 1, which object can you use to create static routes? ISDB. So ISDB is Internet Service Database objects that we seen with the name of Internet Service. That is what is called as the ISDB objects. When the stop policy routing action is used in a policy route, which behavior is expected? FortiGate routes the traffic based on the regular routing table. Yes, it's going to skip the firewall policy and is going to use the static routes that you have in place. If in case you do not have any static route in place as well, what is the default behavior? The default behavior is actually same to just a routing, just a normal router as well. If you do not match any route, it will drop the packet. Same thing happens over here as well. Okay. Now guys, you are free to ask any questions if in case you want. All right. So I'll give you around 5 minutes or so. Any questions with respect to what we have just seen with the routing part? Any questions, any doubts? If not, we can move on further. If in case you have, go ahead and ask.
Arvind, can you just go through policy routing one more time, if you don't mind? Yeah.
So in this, anything specific that you are looking for, or the concept of policy-based routing is that you want to know?
Not specific, but I just want to know how it is different from the normal routing.
Oh, okay. All right. So I think what we have to understand is that whenever we are talking about policy-based routing, right, how is it different is policy-based routing gives you more control on what information can be routed through your firewall. Okay. Now, when I say what information can be routed, what I mean is that, see, whenever you're talking about a normal route, okay, let me see if I can show you something over here. See, this is the normal routes, right? Now in this section, if you look closely, how much options do I have in the destination? Is it either a subnet, which I can basically mention manually, named addresses, whatever address object that I have created, and internet services, whatever address object which is created before, or is it pre-configured on the firewall? That's what all option that I have. Yeah. Do you see any option for port, as in HTTP or HTTPS or port 443 or 80 or telnet or SSH? I do not have this option, right, on the route section. I can only provide information about the destination as an IP address information, and then I can provide what the gateway address would be and the AD and the priority. That is what I have. Okay. Yeah. Now, if I look onto the policy route section, okay. Now over here, let me just focus on the middle part. Now, see over here, it is asking you, see on the top, it says destination, as in whatever destination that you want. All right. Apart from that, you already have the address in the intent service. You have that in the static route as well, right? So
Yeah.
that is similar, common. Let's look into the protocol option. This is what which differentiates a policy route from a static route, because it does not have the static route does not have this protocol option. You can identify that if it is TCP, if it is matching these ports, then forward the traffic. Otherwise, do not forward the traffic as well. I can do that as well. So you are basically giving a more granular approach towards routing, that what all information. So let's say, for example, let's say, for example, you have a server. Okay. Now, rather than creating a firewall policy, what you can do is you can create a policy route and say that if in case somebody is accessing the server on 443, you are allowed. Anybody else may be trying with the SSH or telnet, you're not allowed. Okay.
Yeah.
So that is what makes it a difference between a static route and a policy route.
Yeah. Even instead of creating a policy, we can still create a policy route and make it happen, right?
Yeah. Right. That's why it says policy route.
Okay. So always policy routes takes precedence over.
It's always takes precedence. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
First thing which it checks that. Yes.
Hi, Arvi. Arvi, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I have a policy-based routing
Uh-huh.
towards my server in Amazon, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have a name service with Amazon.
Uh-huh.
Which one will take a precedence here?
Okay. See, what happens is that whenever, so let's say, for example, for Amazon, you have created a route, right? Now, that is that a static route or a policy route?
So I have a policy route separate.
Okay.
And, I ran into this trouble. Just want to understand like which one is taking, because I have a policy route that I've created to my Amazon cloud.
Okay.
Right. And that seems to be conflicting with the name service, which Amazon itself has the Fortigate default. But it does not give me that multiple options of, using my ports properly there. You know what I mean? There are certain services that is running in my cloud, correct, through Amazon services. But if I use my policy, I want to polarize my ports there.
Right.
To be precise, like I can tell you that is I have a CUCM SIP server, right? Which I'm running Office right now. I want to move it to cloud basically, so that I can use my cloud DNS of my phones. It can be soft phones, IP phones, and stuff like that. But I want to granularize that. What I mean by that is I would just want to open 5060 port there, right? So I want to specifically target that port in the server in the cloud in Amazon.
Right.
And I have created another name service, but that name service uses anything and everything, right?
Right.
My problem is I want to take that one specific port only communicates the server which is sitting outside of my network, but to Amazon.
Okay, makes sense. So see, in this kind of situation, I think I think policy route basically gives you this option that you can specify, because see, with static route, what will happen is that if in case you have a name service, right, and you say Amazon, you create a name service over there as well, you are in a way you are allowing everything for that Amazon, right, which you do not really want.
Right.
You want specific services to be allowed for Amazon, and that's what you can get from the policy base. Now the good thing is that policy based basically takes precedence over your network routes. So even if you have a named service on the Amazon for maybe everything which is allowing Amazon cloud access to everything, what you can do is with the policy based route in the protocol section, you can basically mention that what all ports that you want in the destination, and then action should be forward traffic. Okay, if you have done this, and I believe this should work. And now, if in case, let's say for example, if in case this is not working for you, then the best way to find out or figure out what exactly the problem is a packet capture, because packet capture would basically tell you that what exactly is happening. Maybe is it even matching the firewall or the policy based route or not? Okay, because
So what you're saying is
Hmm.
I should allow the policy base.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yes.
still my policy. Do my packet capture and see how many ports that AWS is doing between
Well, ideally,
server.
I would say that if so, basically, if you know that what port the communication would happen, right? Then I would
5060.
5060. Okay, so you should basically allow that in the destination. Okay, and that should basically do the job for you. Now, let's say for example, even this is not working for you. Let's say, okay, worst case scenario, then a packet capture would basically let you know that what exactly are those ports which could be causing the problem, and then according to that you can make some changes. But yes.
No. My question is not that. My question is, I'm running the name service as AWS, right? Amazon.
Okay.
You already answered my question. Basically, if I run the packet capture, I know what are the ports that they are opening up,
Right.
and I can policy on top.
On top of that, yes, that's true.
Okay, got it. No, I got it.
Okay.
But is there is it going to take the policy base is going to take a precedence for the name service, correct?
It is going to take the precedence, yes.
Okay, that's what I understand. Okay, thank you.
Okay, got it. Okay, all right. So let's do one thing. Let me just stop the live streaming. Guys, I think what you can do is, if in case you are interested, you can get in touch with the management, and they will let you know that what needs to be done to attend this class. Okay. Now we are going to take another session maybe tomorrow. So we'll keep you posted. Any questions, any doubts, any queries, just feel free to reach out to us, and we'll happily answer you that.
Hello. Hello, Raufuddin here.
Raufuddin, give me 1 minute. Let me just stop the live streaming. Hold on.